It's not your imagination. There are a lot more vegans around. The number of vegans in America went up 500% in 3 years, according to one study. And Oregon is at the epicenter. Portland is a top vegan destination in the world. It's home to the country's oldest tofu maker, as well as the first vegan mini mall and strip club. But Oregon is known for salmon and oysters, and Portland, cured meats, fish sauce chicken wings, and bacon on donuts. So what's up with this vegan thing? Well, Oregon's been building toward it for a long time. In the 1890s, the state was home to one of the first vegetarian societies in the country, as well as a community of Seventh-day Adventists, one of the first groups to popularize a vegetarian diet in the U.S. They found a state with fantastic soil for growing food, and they opened up Portland's first vegetarian restaurant. The vegetarian community continued to grow over the next few decades until a new explosive ingredient was thrown in the mix: hippies.
It was this generation that was really determined to eat what their parents didn't eat.
Jonathan Kaufman has written about how counterculture in the 60s and 70s shaped what we eat today. During that time, food turned political.
If you read any of the early articles in alternative newspapers about food, you couldn't get more than a few paragraphs without finding mention of the war or industry or plastic or the man.
Radical food thought then sounds familiar today. There was a focus on organic food and eliminating sugars. But there was this larger message unfolding. Our choices as consumers matter. Diet for a Small Planet made a compelling case for vegetarianism. Global hunger could be solved if we used the soy fed to animals for humans instead. More and more people were dropping meat for tofu and swapping white bread for whole grain. But finding some of these foods was difficult.
I talked to one macrobiotic guy who was trying to get brown rice in 1965, and he had to find a friend of a friend who was living at a karate dojo and knock on the back door and pick up like 5 pounds of brown rice.
Oregon grew into a destination for this new political movement.
I left Ohio right after I graduated in 1974, and my old roommate and I came out in a Volkswagen Bug, and we were just following a Joni Mitchell album cover, like Oregon is the place to be sort of idea.
Seth Tibbett was a vegetarian converted by Diet for a Small Planet. Some of the foods he and this new generation of Oregonians were buying got really popular.
There was no granola in all of my college town except in the head shop where I was working as a salesperson, and right below the pipes and the papers there was these little rainbow bags of granola.
And 5 years later, he says it was everywhere. Around that time, Seth stumbled on what he believed to be the next disruptive food product, the next granola, tempeh. That's a soy product originally from Indonesia. It's firmer and more grainy than tofu.
I first started bringing tempeh around Portland. I had a 3-door Datsun that I had gotten out of a junkyard.
He sold tempeh in a new growing market for this hippie food.
People weren't just forming little stores, they were forming trucking companies and wholesale warehouses and distributors. It was so hard at that time to get a lot of the foods that they were adopting that they had to create their own sort of supply chain.
Seth struggled to make money for almost a decade.
I was living on about $300 a month.
At the same time, a chef from the same small community struck gold. Paul Wenner took some leftover rice pilaf at his Gresham restaurant, added mushrooms, oats, and cheese, baked it, and invented the garden burger, the first veggie patty to go mainstream.
He had the technology of stamping out these burgers, 60 of these a minute, and in an hour he'd have a pallet of them. What he could do in an hour took me 2 days.
Seth remembered it when he had his first taste of success. In 1995, he partnered up with a pair of local chefs to make a Thanksgiving turkey out of tofu. They called it tofurkey and sold 500. Inspired, Seth decided the next year to do it on his own. He took a lesson from Garden Burger.
We ended up with a machine that could just stamp these out.
Tofurkey became a company and world leader in meat substitutes. Proteins like garden burger and tofurkey helped make a meat-free diet more painless and made it easier to go even further, to not rely on any animal products. Around the same time Seth was selling tempeh out of his van, a younger generation was discovering a more radical vegetarian lifestyle through bands like Conflict. It was veganism, a lifestyle that went deeper into the how and why we use and consume animals in society. Punk bands around the world were tying together politics of their music with this animal rights core. That's how Emiko Badio and Chad Miller learned about it.
You know, you get a record and it would come with like a whole booklet and you learn about issues you might not have thought much about.
But even by the late 90s, being a vegan was still very much a DIY endeavor.
Cooking a lot, lentil loaf.
A lot of nutritional yeast cheese.
Nutritional yeast cheese.
Carob.
Right.
Emiko and Chad moved from New York City to Portland in 2002, and they were surprised that it was a more vegan-friendly city, but the options were still limited.
We were tired of shopping at 3 different stores to find what we wanted.
They decided to open up a vegan grocery store, and they were surprised by the immediate response. There were punks and activists, but there were also vegan families from the same generation as Seth who started Tofurkey.
We never hung out with like moms and dads that were vegan.
But these customers found a different store at Food Fight.
It's not all granola hippie food. We're trying to like change the image of it. It's like you don't have to give up Twinkies and jerky and stuff. Like we have these. Okay, we want to show that this is like fun and you're not having to like just beat yourself up all day.
They were also activist-centric and web-savvy. They had an early presence in online shopping and a blog. They also didn't take themselves too seriously. A community rallied around their shop, helping them outgrow their space. And with some friends, they opened the world's first vegan mini-mall. There's a clothing store, a bakery, and even a tattoo parlor. Over time, through restaurants and stores, word of mouth, and the internet, the vegan community in Portland grew.
I think it was just sort of a cascading effect of more and more vegans coming to what they saw as the most vegan-friendly place in America, if not the world.
Portland was a relatively cheap city to start a business. There's a growing food scene. It had food carts. And it was home to a now entrenched vegan community. In a way, the nation has been catching up with Oregon's early embrace of vegetarian and vegan diets, including zeitgeist celebrities like Beyonce.
Talk about her new vegan diet. The pop star.
So veganism is here. Seth went from living in a tree fort to having a business that makes $40 million a year. Food Fight is getting international attention. It's hard not seeing all this as the latest lifestyle trend. But for over 100 years, Oregon has been a hotbed for conscious eating and the political ideas behind it. In reality, veganism here is nothing new. It's part of Oregon's heritage.